Hello dear viewers, we're on the sidelines of the AUB General Assembly Ordinary Session here in Kigali, the final day of the session, and now I am with Mr. Asiimwe, Director General of the Rwanda Broadcasting Agency, and the new Vice Chairman of the African Union of Broadcasting. Mr. Asiimwe, welcome to this short interview.
Thank you.
And thank you for taking the time to speak to us.
Thank you.
Now, I have only a few questions, 3 in total, concerning the future of the AUB and some of the challenges that were discussed over the week. One of them, and a lot of emphasis was put on this, the need for digital migration for the African continent. And it has been established many times over that this is necessary. It's no longer a question of arguing about that, but the question is, at the current pace at which it is being done, do you see it being completed anytime soon? The new deadline is 2020. In your opinion, do you see this actually being met?
First of all, let me start by saying that the election to the vice chairmanship of the African Union of Broadcasters is not Arthur as an individual, but it's a slot for Rwanda. And so the Director General of Rwanda Broadcasting Agency only has to carry the flag on behalf of Rwanda. So we appreciate that Rwanda was given this opportunity and the confidence that was given to Rwanda to be in the executive committee, and we promise that we shall do whatever is within our means to ensure that the mandate of this institution is reached. Now, as regards to what we discussed here, especially on the issues of digital migration, I think, like we said, it's long overdue. The International Telecommunication Union, ITU, gave several deadlines. I think the last deadline was for July 2015. But up to now, we're talking about 12 countries that have completed the process of digital migration. 12 out of 55 countries in Africa, you'd see that it's a very small percentage. And we're told that by 2020, the ITU is going to be switching off completely the analog technology, or giving out the frequencies that are under analog to other sectors. So broadcast will not be having any frequencies within this area of analog. So there must be a switch off of the analog and we adopt and go on to digital. So we have had extensive discussions as a union. And we are blessed to have the head of state here, who also is at the same time the chairman of the AU. And we told him at length about these issues, and we called for his intervention, especially at the top leadership level of the continent, to discuss it at AU level and see how our African brothers and sisters can be able to switch off the analog technologies by 2020 and move on to digital. And we are lucky that His Excellency the President promised to take it up and discuss it. And at least one of the recommendations from the group, of which the President also agreed with, was that we should give this to Smart Africa. Smart Africa, I think, could be able to take on the advisory role at the continental level, so that countries that are still lagging behind can seek guidance from Smart Africa, but also guide us in terms of what technologies should we bring in. Because with digital migration also, we seem to be risking to turn Africa into a dumping ground for cheaper technologies that are not up to standards. So I think having competent people from an organization like Smart Africa would be very good in terms of advising the continent.
Another issue that has been a sticking point for a while now, it's not just because the summit took place this week, is financing. And you yourself have been quite vocal about financing for public broadcasters in the private sector. They also have problems with revenue generation. Now, my question is, much as I understand, and also being a media practitioner myself, I understand that the sector needs more financing. President Kagame yesterday himself also agreed that the sector needs more funding. Do you believe that what we have, as I say that as the media in general in Africa, do you believe that we're using it as we should before we start asking for more, even though there is a need for more?
No. Financing, of course, we are very mindful and extremely mindful of the reality that our national treasuries are not that fat. We know there are so many competing national priorities for our member countries. So we know that there are issues in health, issues in education, agriculture, that also equally need resources like the broadcasters need. But our discussion has been around the issue of coming up with a sustainable model of financing public broadcasters. And our examples have been what is used in mainly Europe, Asia, and North America, of some license fees, for example. In Europe, most households that have TVs pay a license fee. Because this is a public good, and the public good has to really be, there must be a cost to consuming this public good. So I think it is high time that we discussed a more sustainable way of ensuring that the public service broadcasters who are working for the interests of both the ordinary person on the streets or the general public, but also the governments, how they should be able to continue serving this mandate of public service broadcasting without enduring the pressure of commercial interests. Because if we go commercial, then we forget, we divert from our core mandate. If we go commercial, we begin showing more of commercially attracting content in the examples of, entertainment. You go for movies, you go for, these soft things. I'm not saying that they're not important, they're important, but you go for the for the content that largely attracts a huge audience which will be associated with advertisers. But you do that at the expense of other important national programming or national issues in the areas of culture, in the areas of marginalized groups, in the areas of even the core sectors like culture, health, where you need to be putting emphasis in terms of programming and content. So it is very, very important that our African public broadcasters should stay the course of serving as true public service broadcasters, or the mandate of public service, and are not diverted by commercial interests. Because if you have diverted by commercial interests, we lose on the expectations of our mandate. And that's why our brothers and sisters in Europe or elsewhere have found that very important, and they said, you know what, let us finance these institutions because of the nature of their responsibilities.
And lastly, where do you see Africa's media 20 years from now? What sort of challenges do you believe it will be facing? Will they be similar to they are now, or will have things changed, moved on?
Before I come to that, I also want to mention that one of the most important things we discussed here was the sporting rights.
Yes.
Where we have had a huge challenge of especially the African tournaments, the AFCOM and CHAN, all these African footballing tournaments. We've had a huge challenge in terms of accessing our rights and buying the rights to show to our people. First of all, the rights are not owned by Africans. They're owned by foreigners. That is one sad thing. Second, the cost is very high. But what is very interesting is that the president at least also gave us assurances that indeed the sporting rights are going to be an area that the top leadership of this continent can look into and be able to help our broadcasters to access these rights. So it is something that we also take home with, and we appreciate the intervention of the President, and we think this is going to be revised. So in terms of the future of the media is bright in Africa. With digital migration comes with so many opportunities. And with this commitment from the people we see here, I think we are growing and growing for the better. We are determined as ever to make sure that the African voice is heard and their voice is spoken and transmitted by Africans themselves.
Mr. Arthur Asiimwe, Director General of RBA and new Vice Chairman of the AUB, congratulations on that appointment. Thank you very much.
Thank you too.
Yeah.